It was just a joke. One tiny comment. I didn't think it would blow up like this. I mean, couples tease each other all the time, right? We laugh about each other's quirks, make little observations, keep things light and playful. I thought what I said was harmless, maybe a little mean, but nothing that would destroy everything we had built together. But now my photos are everywhere. My reputation is in ruins, and I'm learning that some words can never be taken back. The night it happened started perfectly normal. We had been out with friends at this trendy rooftop bar downtown, drinking cocktails and celebrating my promotion at work. I was feeling confident and happy, maybe a little too confident from all the champagne and attention I was getting from everyone congratulating me on my career success. Jake had been unusually affectionate all evening, holding my hand, complimenting my dress, telling everyone how proud he was of me. He seemed relaxed and genuinely happy in a way that made me feel like we were in the perfect place as a couple. We had been together for 3 years, living together for the past year, and everything felt stable and secure between us. When we got home around midnight, we were both tipsy and giggly, the kind of mood that usually led to great intimate moments between us. Jake was being sweet and romantic, taking his time with everything, clearly wanting to make the night special for me after my big celebration. But then, in that vulnerable moment afterward, when we were both relaxed and happy, my mouth decided to betray me in the worst possible way. I looked at him with what I thought was a playful smile and said, "I thought it would be bigger, honestly. Guess I was wrong about that." The words came out before I really thought about them. I was feeling bold and confident, maybe trying to be the kind of girlfriend who could make cheeky jokes about anything. I expected him to laugh it off, maybe make some comeback joke about my body, or tease me about something in return. That's how these conversations usually went between us. Instead, Jake went completely silent. Not angry silent, not hurt silent, but this cold, calculating kind of quiet that I had never seen from him before. He just stared at me for what felt like forever, then got up and went to the bathroom without saying a single word. When he came back to bed, he turned away from me and pretended to fall asleep immediately. I tried to apologize, saying it was just a silly joke and that I didn't mean anything by it, but he didn't respond at all. I figured he was just embarrassed and would get over it by morning like he always did when I said something stupid. My name is Madison, I'm 26, and I had been dating Jake for 3 years before that night destroyed everything. Jake worked in IT security for a major tech company, made excellent money, and was one of those quiet, methodical guys who thought everything through carefully before acting or speaking. He was usually patient with my tendency to say things without thinking, and he rarely stayed mad about anything for more than a day or two. Our relationship had always been solid from the outside looking in, even though I sometimes felt like he was too sensitive about certain things. Jake was self-conscious about his body in ways that I found unnecessarily dramatic and frustrating. He worked out regularly at an expensive gym, ate carefully, and looked great by any objective standard, but he was always worried about not being impressive enough or masculine enough compared to other guys we knew. I had gotten into the habit of teasing him gently about his insecurities over the years, thinking it would help him get over them and build the kind of confidence I wanted to see in him. I made little jokes about his height compared to taller guys, his muscle mass compared to the fitness influencers he followed on social media, his performance in bed compared to the exaggerated stories our friends sometimes shared about their relationships, always in what I thought was a loving, playful way that would toughen him up. I figured if he could learn to laugh about these things with me, he would stop being so worried about them with other people. I thought I was helping him develop thicker skin and a better sense of humor about his own perceived shortcomings. The fact that he never explicitly told me to stop or said that my comments bothered him seriously made me think my approach was working. Looking back now with painful clarity, I can see that my playful teasing was probably more systematically hurtful than I realized at the time. But Jake never gave me clear signals that I was crossing lines or causing real damage to his self-esteem. He would just get quiet and withdrawn for a while after my comments. Then, things would go back to normal within a day or two. I interpreted his silence as acceptance of my feedback, not as evidence that I was slowly destroying his confidence and trust in me. The morning after my terrible joke, Jake was polite but distant in a way that felt fundamentally different from his usual post-argument quietness. He made coffee and breakfast like always, asked about my plans for the day, and went through all the normal motions of our morning routine. But something essential had shifted in how he looked at me and interacted with me, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time and not liking what he discovered. When I tried to bring up what had happened the night before, apologizing again and explaining that I had been drunk and stupid, he just said it was fine and changed the subject to something mundane about weekend plans. But his voice had this flat, detached quality that made me feel like he was already mentally checking out of our relationship. Over the next few days, I noticed that Jake was spending significantly more time on his phone and computer than usual. He would stay up late after I went to bed, saying he had important work projects with tight deadlines that required his immediate attention. When I walked into rooms where he was working, he would quickly close his laptop or put his phone face down, like he was hiding something sensitive or personal. I started feeling increasingly paranoid that maybe he was talking to other women online or browsing dating apps to see what other options were available to him. The thought that my stupid, thoughtless joke might have pushed him toward emotional or physical cheating made me anxious and clingy in ways that probably made everything worse between us during those crucial days. I began checking his social media obsessively, looking for signs that he was interacting with other women or posting things that indicated dissatisfaction with our relationship. I started asking casual questions about his coworkers and friends, trying to figure out if there was someone specific he might be interested in pursuing if he decided to leave me. The paranoia was eating me alive, but Jake remained calm and seemingly normal in all our interactions. He still did his share of household chores, still split bills and expenses fairly, still maintained our usual routines around meals and weekend activities. If anything, he seemed more relaxed and cheerful than he had been in months, which somehow made me even more suspicious about what he was planning behind the scenes. A week after that night, everything exploded in the most devastating and public way possible. I was at work, sitting in a meeting with my supervisor and 3 colleagues about a new project timeline, when my phone started buzzing incessantly with calls and text messages. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was probably just spam calls or non-urgent personal messages that could wait until after the meeting ended. But the buzzing continued so persistently that my supervisor eventually asked if I needed to step out and handle whatever emergency was clearly demanding my immediate attention. I apologized and checked my phone quickly, expecting to see missed calls from Jake or my parents about some kind of family crisis or accident. Instead, I saw dozens of messages from friends, family members, distant relatives, college acquaintances, and even people I hadn't spoken to in years. The preview text of the messages made my stomach drop immediately. Words like photos, leaked, everywhere, and so sorry kept appearing in the notification previews. I excused myself from the meeting and went to the bathroom to figure out what was happening. As I started reading through the messages in detail, I realized that the terrible thing everyone was contacting me about had happened to me, not to someone else I knew. My private, intimate photos were circulating online and being sent directly to people in my personal and professional networks. Not just random strangers on anonymous websites, but people I saw regularly: co-workers, family members, friends from college and high school, neighbors from my apartment building, even my boss, and several clients I worked with professionally. These were pictures I had taken specifically for Jake during our relationship, in expensive lingerie I had bought to surprise him, or completely naked in poses that were meant to be seductive and intimate. Photos that were supposed to exist only on his phone and in his private messages, shared between 2 people who loved and trusted each other completely. But the worst part wasn't just that the photos were out there for everyone to see. Each image had been paired with cruel, humiliating captions that provided detailed commentary about my body, my personality, my relationship behavior, and specifically what I had said to Jake that night a week earlier. Messages like, "She said I wasn't big enough for her, guess she needs a bigger audience instead," and "Here's what someone who body shames their boyfriend looks like when she thinks nobody's watching," and "Madison thinks she deserves better than me. Let's see what everyone else thinks she deserves," accompanied the most intimate and vulnerable images of my body. The captions revealed private details about our sex life, my personal insecurities, arguments we had had in private, and embarrassing things I had told Jake in confidence during our 3 years together. It was clear that someone with intimate knowledge of our relationship had crafted these messages specifically to cause maximum humiliation and social damage. My phone was ringing constantly with calls from people who had received the photos. Some were genuinely concerned friends asking if I was okay and if someone had hacked my accounts or stolen my phone. Others were angry family members demanding to know how this could have happened, why these pictures existed at all, and what I had done to provoke such extreme retaliation from someone. The most humiliating and professionally damaging calls came from coworkers who had received the photos sent directly to their work email addresses. My supervisor called me back into her office within an hour of the initial distribution, asking me to explain the inappropriate materials that had been sent to multiple employees using my name and personal information. I tried to explain that I had no idea how this was happening and that I was clearly the victim of some kind of targeted cyber attack or revenge plot, but the damage to my professional reputation was already irreversible. Everyone in my office had seen me naked, along with detailed descriptions of my private relationship problems and sexual behavior. The promotion I had just celebrated was suddenly in serious jeopardy. My supervisor made it clear that the company couldn't have employees whose personal lives created hostile work environments or reflected poorly on the organization's professional image. I was told to take the rest of the week off while they decided how to handle the situation appropriately. When I got home that evening, emotionally destroyed and professionally humiliated, Jake was sitting calmly at our kitchen table, with his laptop open, looking completely relaxed and satisfied with himself in a way that made my blood run cold. There was something different about his posture and facial expression, a kind of quiet triumph that I'd never seen from him before. When I confronted him directly about the photos, asking if he had any idea how someone could have gotten access to such private images, he didn't even try to deny what he had done or pretend to be surprised by the situation. He looked me straight in the eyes with complete calm and said, "You humiliated me in the most private, vulnerable moment we could share as a couple. I decided to return that favor in a way that felt appropriately proportional to what you did to me." I started crying and screaming at him, asking how he could do something so cruel and illegal, how he could betray my trust so completely, how he could destroy my career and relationships with my family, over one stupid comment that I had already apologized for repeatedly. But Jake remained completely calm and eerily composed throughout my emotional breakdown. He explained in detail how he had spent the past week carefully planning and executing his revenge, making sure to distribute the photos in ways that would cause maximum social and professional damage while protecting himself from legal consequences. As someone who worked in IT security for a living, he knew exactly how to cover his digital tracks. He had used anonymous email accounts created on public Wi-Fi networks, temporary phone numbers that couldn't be traced back to him, and technical methods I didn't understand to ensure that the photo distribution couldn't be definitively linked to him by law enforcement or legal investigators. He had researched the revenge porn laws in our state and structured his retaliation carefully to exploit loopholes and evidentiary requirements that would make prosecution extremely difficult, even if I could prove he was responsible. Every aspect of his plan had been calculated to destroy my life while minimizing his own risk of serious consequences. The most chilling part of his explanation was how methodical and premeditated his revenge had been. This wasn't a moment of anger or emotional impulse following my hurtful comment. He had spent an entire week researching, planning, and systematically implementing the complete destruction of my social and professional reputation as calculated payback for 10 seconds of thoughtless cruelty. He had made lists of everyone in my personal and professional networks, gathered their contact information from my social media accounts and phone, and crafted personalized messages designed to cause maximum embarrassment and relationship damage with each specific recipient. He had put more thought and effort into ruining my life than he had ever put into planning vacations or special occasions during our 3 years together. Over the next few days, the humiliation continued to spread and intensify across every area of my life. Friends started confronting me with increasingly detailed questions about what I had done to Jake to provoke such extreme and public retaliation. While some people were sympathetic and supportive, others clearly blamed me for creating the situation that led to my own destruction. The general consensus among our mutual social circle seemed to be that while Jake's revenge was harsh, I must have done something truly terrible to push such a normally calm and rational person to such extreme measures. People started looking at me differently, like I was someone capable of hidden cruelty who couldn't be trusted with sensitive information or vulnerable moments. My family was mortified and furious in ways that damaged our relationships permanently. My parents couldn't understand why I had taken such explicit photos in the first place, and they were horrified that people they knew professionally and socially in our small hometown had been exposed to graphic images of their daughter. My mother received copies of the photos from people she worked with at the bank, along with detailed questions about how she had raised me and what kind of values she had tried to instill in me growing up. My father was approached by neighbors and golfing buddies who had received the images, creating social situations that were awkward and humiliating for my entire family. The relationship with my parents became strained and uncomfortable in ways it had never been before. They were dealing with their own social embarrassment and professional awkwardness while also trying to support me through the crisis, but their disappointment and anger were obvious in every conversation we had. My younger sister, who was still in college, called me crying because the photos had somehow made their way to her campus social media groups. She was being teased and harassed by classmates who had seen the images and connected them to our family name. The humiliation I was experiencing was spreading to innocent people I loved, multiplying my guilt and regret exponentially. The social isolation that followed was more devastating than I had anticipated. Friends stopped inviting me to group events because they were uncomfortable with the attention and drama that surrounded me wherever I went. People who had seen the photos couldn't look at me normally anymore, and conversations became awkward and stilted, even with close friends who were trying to be supportive. Dating became completely impossible. Any potential romantic interest could easily find my photos online, along with detailed descriptions of my relationship failures and cruel behavior toward previous partners. The images and captions painted me as someone who was both sexually available and emotionally cruel, a combination that attracted exactly the wrong kind of attention while repelling anyone who might be genuinely interested in a real relationship. My career suffered enormous damage that extended far beyond just my current job. The photos had been sent to clients and professional contacts throughout my industry, making it clear that finding new employment would be extremely difficult, even if I left my current position voluntarily. Job interviews became nightmarish experiences where potential employers had clearly discovered my situation through simple internet searches. Even when the photos weren't mentioned directly, I could see the knowledge in their faces and the way conversation shifted from professional interest to uncomfortable politeness. Jake moved out of our apartment within 2 weeks of his revenge plot, leaving me with lease obligations and utility bills I couldn't afford on my suddenly reduced and unstable income. He had planned his exit strategy carefully, making sure that all the major financial obligations were in my name so that his departure would create maximum economic hardship on top of everything else. He took only his personal belongings and left behind all the furniture and household items we had purchased together. But somehow, this felt more like abandonment than generosity. I was surrounded by reminders of our relationship in an apartment I could no longer afford, dealing with the aftermath of his calculated destruction of my life. The legal system offered virtually no real recourse, despite the obvious criminality of what Jake had done. While revenge porn was technically illegal in our state, proving that he had been responsible was nearly impossible given his technical expertise and careful planning to cover his digital tracks. The police took a detailed report and acknowledged that what had happened to me was clearly a crime, but they made it very clear that prosecution would be extremely unlikely without concrete evidence directly linking Jake to the photo distribution. The anonymous accounts and technical methods he had used made building a prosecutable case almost impossible. Months passed, and the photos continued to haunt every aspect of my daily life. They had been shared so widely across different platforms, websites, and private message chains that removing them completely was virtually impossible. Every time I thought the situation was finally beginning to fade from public attention, someone new would discover the images, and the cycle of humiliation and social damage would begin again. I had developed a pattern over our 3 years together of making cutting remarks about Jake's insecurities and perceived shortcomings, always disguised as playful teasing or helpful feedback, but actually motivated by my own need to feel superior and clever at his expense. I had been slowly and systematically eroding his self-confidence and sense of masculine adequacy while telling myself I was just being honest and fun. Every time Jake had seemed less confident or assertive than I wanted him to be, I had made little jokes about his height, his build, his performance, his career achievements, or his social skills compared to other men we knew. I had convinced myself that this kind of constructive criticism would motivate him to improve himself and become the kind of partner I really wanted. But the reality was that I had been engaged in a subtle form of emotional abuse, using his love for me and his trust in our relationship to attack the very foundations of his self-worth. The comment about his size had been the culmination of years of smaller cruelties, not an isolated moment of poor judgment that came out of nowhere. Understanding my own behavior didn't make Jake's retaliation any less devastating or legally wrong. He had chosen to respond to my pattern of emotional cruelty with calculated destruction that went far beyond anything I had done to him. 2 wrongs definitely didn't make a right in this situation, and nothing I had said or done justified the permanent damage he had inflicted on my reputation, career, and family relationships. Looking back with painful clarity, I could see that every joke I had made about Jake's body, every comparison to other men that made him look inadequate, every casual comment that undermined his confidence had been a small betrayal of the love he offered me. I had been systematically destroying the foundation of trust and respect that our relationship needed to survive, all while telling myself I was just being playful and honest.